All right, hello and welcome to our webinar, our November webinar. We are going to be chatting with Cynthia Scott and talking about financial compliance today. So we'll record this and send out a link for those of you who aren't able to join us. Certainly feel free to type anything in the chat and I'll moderate that while we kind of toggle back and forth. And just, I'm super casual for those of you all who haven't been on one of our calls lately. Cynthia and I go back a little bit, so you'll hear us just kind of bantering. And we'll get started and just kind of chat a little bit about financial compliance for 20-30 minutes, and then leave some time for Q&A. Happy to answer questions about financial compliance, the program, compliance, and risk management in general. And thanks so much for joining us. Let's see. Outsmart my tech here. My name is Kelly Rodriguez Curry, and I am the Director of International and Graduate Studies here at Seattle University School of Law. My contact information is below, but you don't have to scramble to write that down yet. I will have that at the end. I am a 2014 graduate of Seattle University School of Law. I earned my Juris Doctor and my master's in sport management and, sport administration and leadership. On main campus at Seattle University. My background is in compliance. I've got about 10 years of business experience in process design and procedures. And I also spent some time in NCAA and sport management and compliance on that side of the house. My academic research and expertise is in sport law. So I teach here at Seattle U Law and at Seattle University in our MBA Sport and Entertainment Management department, focusing on sport management, sport law. My specific academic area of research is in student athlete experience, around mostly NCAA compliance, Title IX compliance, those sorts of things. So I come at this from more of the academic area. Cynthia very much comes at this from a practical standpoint, and I will let her introduce herself, but it is worth noting that she is an alum of our program and super happy to have her back as a adjunct faculty member. And Cynthia, if you could just take a minute and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Great, thanks, Kelly. I'm Cynthia Scott. I am Seattle Bank's internal audit manager, and prior to working at Seattle Bank, I worked at Heritage Bank as the compliance monitoring officer, which is where I realized I didn't know what I didn't know, and realized I did need to have some experience in further education, which is when I started my search for an online program to facilitate what I didn't know. When I talked with my previous manager, Terry Salinas, who was also my shareholder in my capstone project in this program, and I saw this program on LinkedIn, sent it to Terry. She looked at it and she said, "Oh my God," she said, "I would have done this instead of my JD," which she also is an alum from Seattle University. She earned her JD there. And so I started in on this program in 2019, and I finished in August 2021. And it has been literally the best thing for my career that I could have ever asked for. I've also been in banking for 35 plus years and have done everything from mortgage banking all the way through back office, middle office, which is in treasury and capital markets, and policy procedures, quality control, and now I'm internal audit manager.
I love that. I love that we get a lot of questions, and we'll dig into this a little bit later, but we get a lot of questions from students or prospective students around, like, do I need a JD? Should I get a JD? Is the MLS sufficient? And I mean, it's just, I think that part of the issue is that folks didn't have an MLS to choose from 20 years ago. So here we are, and now it's an option. So we'll talk about that in a little bit, but thank you so much for being here. I can't even tell you, it's always a pleasure to just chat with you. And I appreciate so much what you bring to the table in our classrooms. your practical experience and your story is always just absolutely fascinating. And we're so grateful for everything you bring to our community.
Thank you.
I would love just kind of briefly to talk about what is financial compliance. As somebody who comes from business and technology as my background and then kind of pivoted to sport, and I very much appreciate all of the safeguards and emails that I get from my bank when there's a breach or something. I know nothing about financial technology, so if you could explain it to the rest of us, what is this space? What is it about?
All right, so financial compliance is kind of like maybe a two-pronged approach. One is the cybersecurity part. That's where your Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act comes into play. Your GDPR in Europe comes into play. That's all the data security, data privacy notices, keeping all your customers' data secure and away from the bad guys. The other part of financial compliance has to do with for a financial institution, are you following Reg E? Are you doing your error disputes correctly? Reg CC holds, are you holding your client's money properly? Are you releasing it on time? Are you keeping the records for the appropriate amount of time? Reg DD, truth and savings. Are you following this huge reg? And yes, that's what I test. And it's amazing how much gray areas in all these regulations. For mortgage lending, it's Reg Z and Reg X. We call those the ABC regs for the obvious reason. And so you have to, in my position, you have to know all of those regs. I'm not saying memorize them, but you do have to be aware of all the nuances and be able to answer and research what those nuances are. And that's where the legal writing portion of this program came in so handy for me. Is it really taught me how to do the legal research that I needed for my job. And it was and I can get an answer from my boss now in maybe an hour. but yeah, I can actually do a lot of research and get the right answers that I need for my boss and for the board of directors who I also report to. That's what financial compliance is in a nutshell. I mean, it's huge, so that's just a general huge overview.
Yeah, when we were kind of preparing and when I chat with our professors and our students, right? And many of our students come from from operations and financial world, right? And that is true for healthcare and data and cybersecurity and business, right? Corporate compliance. So some of our students are in these fields already. Some of them are looking to get into these fields. And when I talk with our students who are in financial compliance, there's many different kind of components, right? So there's accounting and there's lending, there's fraud and whistleblowing policies, and all of those, I think, collectively then make up this financial compliance world. And in our various, when you're talking about like the ABC regulations, right? We've got regulations in each one of those areas and each one of those components. And so in kind of moving along in the discussion, what is a day in the life of your job in your world look like in those areas? How do you bring all of that together in your world?
Great. Okay, great question. Thanks, Kelly. In my role as internal audit manager, I also oversee compliance for the bank and the Bank Secrecy Act, anti-money laundering, as well as vendor management. So I have literally all the regs that report up to me. And so that's what's exciting about this job is every day is different. There is no day that's the same. And so like a day like today, I'm doing testing for internal audit and testing to make sure that a servicer is complying to all the regulations that a servicer has to comply to. At the same time, I'm also mediating questions between my compliance officer and the sales team on what is a demand letter and what should be actually in the demand letter. And so we have to look at the regulations, figure out what needs to be in there. More than one regulation is required to be in these demand letters. So That's like just kind of a snapshot of what my day looks like. And it, and then also meetings, lots of meetings.
So, because, ever the attorney, I'm very curious, right? So when you say servicer, you mean loan servicer?
Yes, loan servicing, and because we do service our own mortgage loans, and we also are servicing our own consumer loans. A consumer loan is a loan like a car loan or a boat loan or an unsecured line of credit.
And then when you are talking about demand letters and like working with your compliance officers to include the regulations that go into those demand letters, I think it's fascinating because as an attorney, like I write demand letters all the time. And sometimes it's my own demand letters because I want to demand of a vendor or something that they do something. And so I want to I ask my family sometimes, I'm like, well, do you need me to like write you an email that has like all like my letters behind my name, right? Like, oh, like, do you need me to put on my lawyer hat and like be fancy for you? So it's really fun when you have this kind of training and you get to do that and like use the big words and be fancy. And so like when you're doing that, are you then working to write these? Are you working with your internal counsel? Are you, I mean, it sounds like you have a lot of autonomy to do all of this on your own.
We do, and whenever we do need some legal advice, we are quick to obtain it because, as you know, I'm not an attorney. This program does not make you an attorney. So, but it gives me the knowledge to know when to consult an attorney. And when it comes to so back to your question about demand letters, the regulations are very succinct, for once, about what can and cannot be in a demand letter, what other type of little caveats that you have to put in these demand letters, when you can send a demand letter, when you can send a second demand letter, and so you have to make sure that all of that information is in the demand letter itself. In some cases, they have to be in a certain format, so you have to make sure that the exhibit, thank God some of the regs do give you exhibits on what a format should look like for a letter, and do they match well enough to be, and it still makes our bank part of does it still adhere to our policy and procedures as well. So it's it can be quite lengthy, especially when you get in debates with salespeople who don't quite agree with you.
Yeah, that's really cool. Very, very cool. I love it. I love stuff like that. I think that your work like every day sounds a lot like when I hear internal counsel talking about their work, like they never know quite what they're going to get into on a day-over-day basis. Sometimes it's going to be a different statute or a different employment issue or a different, just every day looks really different. I'm curious if you could tell us a little bit about what skills you took from either a specific course or program generally, or this program generally, that you use. You mentioned the writing, and I literally just got off the phone with one of our students, and she is struggling a little bit. The writing course is super challenging. It's in the first semester. And, Seattle University School of Law is in the top 10 legal writing programs. We are number 6 legal writing program in the country. We have been in the top 10 for more than a decade. And it's a challenging program, right? Legal writing is so unbelievably different than academic writing generally. And part of it is learning to pick apart a statute and read it. Part of it is learning to pick apart a case and then put it all back together the way you want it to work. And it forces you to think very differently. It forces you to be super precise. And when that's, you have to have that in your first semester because it's like foundational to everything else. But it's just so fundamentally different than everything else that you've ever learned about writing. That I know it's challenging for students. And so it's, I want so much. I wish so much I could help students see the long game. So I'm curious if you could talk to your first semester self. What would you tell your first semester self about how you will use that course every day?
Um, okay, so that's also a great question. So my first semester self, first of all, I have to say I love writing. I'm an English major. And so I brought those kind of skills with me, and they were also very helpful. But you are so correct when you have to think about things differently. This course, the writing course, actually was my favorite course, I have to say. It taught me how to think and what questions to ask. Those critical thinking skills. I mean, I already had them because you have to have them when you have an English major degree. But it really it took everything up to the next level, and then sometimes even the next level after that. And I was able to utilize that immediately in my work because at the time I was still at Heritage Bank and I was doing the compliance monitoring. I was so shocked at how I was able to use what I learned in the writing courses as I went through the course. I was able to gain a better understanding of the regulations, why I was looking at them, how to look at them, how to apply them. And I have to say, I created this whole new program at Heritage Bank for compliance monitoring that they still use to this day. And they were the FDIC, who is a regulator of banks here. They came in and said that the program was excellent. So that is what this writing class did for me at Heritage Bank. And of course, I also put those skills to work at Seattle Bank, where I have to actually address the board of directors. And since I report to the audit committee, which is comprised of 4 of the 5 board directors, I'm always working on a daily basis with them. And you have to be succinct. You have to be concise. You don't use any ly words at all, which you'll learn in this course. And I use it every single day, and I've used it since day one. And I have to say, Kelly, that every course that I was in, it was almost like serendipity. Something came up in the course of my business, and I'm like, oh, I just learned that, and it was like, wow. So no, I learned. I mean, every course was apropos to what I was doing at the time, and I have to say that this course also, this program helped me get this job that I have now, and I've been here for a little over 2 years, and it's also increased my pay exponentially because I've been able to apply the skills that I've learned in this program, and I've been elevated my career where I wouldn't have not have been able to before. So again, I didn't know what I didn't know, and now I know it. So this is great. This is a great program.
No, I appreciate that. One of the things that I really have come to appreciate so much, because I have a JD, right? Very different degree. And law school, when you earn a JD in law school, I think people don't realize that they don't actually teach you how to practice law. They teach you about the law, but so much of the law was created and continues to be created, but it's created in a very theoretical manner, and it was created centuries ago, or at least a century ago, or decades. And what this program, the way that this program is so fundamentally different is that it's unbelievably practical, right? There are things that our students do every day in the classroom that our JD students could not do and have not been trained to do. And our JD students are just trained to think and approach the law so differently from our MLS students. This is a very applicable degree. Day one, minute one, you have skills that you can implement into your job so quickly, in a way that a traditional JD law degree just is not. It's just fundamentally different. So I wish that I could articulate that so much better. I don't know that it's something that people really can appreciate unless you really understand how the degrees work differently. But there was an assignment, and I'm sure that you remember which one I'm talking about. It's where you kind of pick apart a statute in Foundations of Compliance. I can't remember exact title. It's later in the presentation. And you have to kind of take a statute and really dissect it. And it would be challenging for a first-year law student to dissect something that in that much detail. We just are not trained to read something with that much detail. You don't get that kind of training until you're really on the job. So I think that this program, the skills and the practical skills that you take away from that, from these courses are unbelievably helpful.
Because you could use them right away. And I don't know about you, but that's kind of how I learn, reading and then applying it. And you're able to apply what you learn in this program, immediately, and it immediately helps. One of my cohorts, and one of my other cohorts, Thij, they both, as we went through the course, they received promotions in their jobs as well, and they directly attributed it to the fact that what they were learning, they could apply to their current career, and their managers saw the improvement. And so it wasn't just me; it was a couple of other cohorts too. That people in other cohorts that were also affected like that.
Yeah, it's just been an amazing process to watch all of you. And so I guess it's a good segue, right? So I think, the paths to financial compliance careers, I get asked this question so often by students and prospective students, like, do I need to go to the JD route, right? Because so many of the folks in those higher C-suite positions right now do have JDs often. And, I alluded to this before, but I think that the reality is that folks in my generation and above did have the only option that they had were to go get a JD. I know that when I was looking to get into sport compliance, that was the only option. And that's why I went to get a JD. And now that's not the case, right? You can get an MLS in compliance without having to pursue specifically a JD. So I'm curious kind of, if there are other paths that you have seen. Are you seeing, clearly like the MLS was beneficial to you and you've seen it with people in your cohort. Are you seeing it become something that's a little bit more common? I think that there are definitely more programs out there. I think that Seattle U has absolutely paved the way in a way that other programs are not. And I'll talk about that again in a minute and how we do it differently here. But yeah, I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
Sure. Yeah, there are other paths, Kelly. You can go to, you can get your certified risk manager designation through like the ABA, not the American Bar Association, but the ABA or the Washington Association. They have classes and they have certifications, and certainly people take those as well. But at the end of the day, they're a certification versus a graduate degree, which everybody that I work with on my executive team, they all have a master's. So it really helps to have that credibility and have those credentials behind you. So the other paths to financial compliance careers, no one thinks that they're going to be a little girl or a little boy and think or however, whatever gender, and decide, oh, I'm going to be a compliance officer. You fall into it, and it's a myriad of ways to get in there. My compliance officer actually has a degree in math, and again, critical thinking skills, right? So really, compliance, financial compliance, or any type of compliance, you really have to have critical thinking skills and be able to apply however you earn them, like through an English degree, or math degree, or science. You can all get there, but it does really help to have the why behind what you're doing, and that's what this degree does. It provides the why, and that was what was so essential to me.
Yeah, I think that you're absolutely right. You said earlier, having like an English degree and then like being able to think critically. And, for those of you who might be a little bit daunted by like, well, an English degree was going to be helpful in legal writing. I came into this legal writing program. My background's in biological sciences, and I did not have an English degree. Writing was always a really big challenge for me. And I struggled with legal writing. It was really hard. And I also, now really like legal writing, it changed the way I view everything. It changed the way I view writing. It changed the way I view analysis, everything. So I did mention that I'll kind of like overview some of the courses, and I've kind of separated them too, because I think it's a really great way to highlight some of the skills that Cynthia was talking about, but also how we do things differently and why I think it's really important. So we have a lot of really foundational courses that set our students up for for really understanding how the law is created, how it is structured, and how to set up a compliance program that's going to be sustainable and flexible and something that you can build on in the long term. And the reason that I personally, and I think that Seattle U generally really approaches curriculum that way, is that it's one thing you can take a bunch of electives, right, and learn about you know, the SOX requirements or Dodd-Frank, or like you can learn about all of these different regulations as they are today in the current existence. And that's great for learning the law today. But all of these things change over time. That's the beauty and the frustration of law. And if you are not set up with a really great foundation for how to read, write, and analyze the law in the long term, you're only ever going to learn the law as it is today. And we really want to set you up with a foundation that's going to teach you how to learn the law in 5 years from now, in 10 years from now, and teach it to yourself, right? So you can know where to go, do a Google search, look it up, and synthesize the law so that you can interpret it yourself and create a demand letter or synthesize it for your board of directors. So when we looked at our curriculum, our required courses are very, very intentional. So your first 3 semesters are on the left-hand side here. And they're the first 6 courses. And all of that is about introducing you to how to read, write, and synthesize the law generally, introduces you to a bunch of fundamental principles, and then really setting up a really strong compliance program. Like, what does it mean to have a compliance and risk management program? What does it mean to read contracts, write contracts, interpret contracts, those sorts of things. And then that final course, the capstone, is at the very end. And our students have a really awesome opportunity to kind of dive deep into whatever area of law they want to, produce something that is, I mean, I hesitate to say that it's a project. It could be a project, a paper, it could be a myriad of different things, and produce something very tangible that is of their own creation, in an area of law that's very interesting to them, and something that's going to hopefully help their career. So I can't say too much more about that because every student produces something so incredibly different. So those are all the required components. And then we have all of these specialized pieces that you can kind of pick from. And you've got several different slots to kind of pick and choose where you want to slot your electives in. I picked all of the ones that may or may not be applicable to financial compliance. And our students you're not siloed into any particular track. You can pick any of the ones here, even if they're not financial necessarily. We're recognizing that, you know, if you're working with a board of directors, corporate compliance is going to be super important, right? Business law is going to be super important. And that might not traditionally be inside the wheelhouse of like financial compliance specifically. Data breach and response, that might ordinarily fall under data and cybersecurity, but that's super important to financial compliance. So our students have a lot of flexibility in how they want to kind of create their program. And together then our hope is to provide you not only with this foundational core that's going to carry you for the next, you know, however long of your career, but then also provide you with these introductory pieces of here's where these areas of law start. So I don't know if you had any thoughts that you wanted to contribute to there, Cynthia, you're welcome to chime in.
Okay, you know, great. No, it's exactly what you said. The excuse me, the required classes really do set you up to learn what you need to know when you need to know it. And then the electives were great to kind of delve into something that you were really interested in. And that's what I really appreciated about the course, except I didn't get to take financial fraud.
Oh, bummer. Well, we've got new courses now too. We just recently added the sustainability and risk management and the global issues and compliance too. So those are new.
Yes. Yes, no, this is great. Thanks.
So we've got, just a couple of other things that I wanted to highlight for those of you who haven't spent a lot of time kind of perusing the website, and feel free to chime in with questions. You're welcome to raise your hand or just, type them in, whatever you like. We technically have 4 focus areas. Certainly, like I said, you can mix and match your electives to kind of tailor it to whatever works for you. Our focus areas are corporate compliance, healthcare compliance, financial compliance, and then data and cybersecurity compliance. Our classes are 100% online and part-time. The program is structured to be that way specifically. So it works out to about 30 credits and over 24 months. And that has you starting either fall or spring, going through the summers. We can be pretty flexible. I have many students who have, life and children, and life happens. I finished my graduate degrees working and with 2 kids, and for real, life happens. So we can certainly work with you and kind of fit the program to what is going on and what your needs are at any given point. Applications are absolutely still open for spring. Our classes begin in January. Our scholarship deadline has technically passed, but we do still have some scholarships available, some scholarship money available. So if you are interested, please feel free to shoot us an email or let us know. You can just submit your application, and the sooner the better. If we still have scholarship money available, we'll absolutely consider it for you, or consider you for it. And the last little bit is our contact information. And certainly if you have other questions, I don't know if you wanted to chime in with anything else, Cynthia. I want to be really respectful of people's time.
Sure. No, I just thank you for this opportunity, Kelly. I appreciate it. And I'm also available to answer anybody's questions offline if they'd like to send me an email at cscott@seattleu.edu. More than happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, and if I know that we don't have that on the thing, but if you all you're welcome to email us and we can get it to Cynthia too. Oh, we do have one question. Let's see. I can unmute you if you like. Go for it, Nick.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, I'll be quick. So I'm in an extremely unique position here, or I don't know how to phrase it correctly other than basically so yeah, I literally just got done with school for 6 years straight in the summer. I have an MBA from online Washington State in finance.
Awesome.
Yeah, and it's been pretty rough since then in finding my career and really getting a jump start on, some type of financial role, rather it be a financial advisor or, just whatever. I don't have a lot of work history, but I enjoy school, and I've just kind of thought about keeping my options open. I don't know exactly what I'm asking here, other than like, how would my background kind of intersect with this program and this degree, and how would it help me in my current state of affairs, basically.
I think that it sounds like there's definitely a synthesis there, right? I think it's worth probably setting up some time. I don't know if maybe you can shoot me an email, or maybe I'll stop the recording and you and I can hang out, and I'll get your information.
Yeah, that'd be
so
great.
that I can have some time. Yeah, I'd love to chat with you a little bit more, just kind of about like where your interests lie. I mean, I think that more generally, I'll be honest, like I take such a really holistic view of compliance. My view of compliance, because I come from kind of a business background, is compliance as a field is very new, right? The idea of compliance, however, is not new, right? When I was just out of college, they used to call these folks like the operations person or the human resources director or whatever, right? Like compliance and process is not new. That's all it is. It's just process. It's putting procedures and documentation into place where there wasn't any, and making sure that we are taking the best practices, call them statutes, call them law, call them regulations, call them just best practices or insurance requirements, whatever you call them, and documenting them so that folks are following them and managing the risk, right? And
Right.
the risk could be that we don't want data being breached so that our customers aren't losing money or mad at us and we're not losing customers. The risk could be that we don't want to get sued, right? The risks are endless. And I think that whether your interests are in specifically the finance world or the business world, having that skill set to be able to look at the myriad of procedures and processes and best practices in place and be able to synthesize that information is never a bad thing. I think that I look at compliance as like leadership. That's just the ability to take in information, synthesize it, and be a leader.
Right.
So,
And if I could add
that's
something
my
to Nick,
thoughts.
if I could add something to Nick, one of my coworkers told one of my employees when she started working for me 8 months ago, she said that she would hire somebody with a compliance background over anybody else, or consider their application more seriously because of a compliance background. Tells, like I said before, tells you the why behind things, and if you're able to do compliance, you can pretty much figure out anything else.
Right.
So,
Yeah. I mean, I'm of the mindset, never stop learning. So, yeah, I'm definitely intrigued. I would love to chat, like you said, once this is
Yeah.
all done.
Yeah. Hang on. I'll stop the recording here in a minute, make sure we don't have any other questions, and then we'll exchange information and I'll give you a call. We'll set
Okay,
something up.
perfect.
Yeah, sounds great. Any other questions? Cindy, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
thank you.
I appreciate you. No worries. Thank you all so much for joining us. And we will we'll be hosting another webinar pretty soon here, actually, on the applications process. Certainly feel free to reach out if you have any questions. The email is lawgraduateonline@Seattle U. Phone number is there, 206-398-4268. And you can find us online. So I hope you all have a really great last few weeks of the year and a wonderful 2023. Thanks so much.